My daughter-in-law used my husband's funeral money for a vacation. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply sat there, in that cold office, and smiled. What I did next left everyone in that room speechless. I'm glad you're here. Follow my story until the end, and tell me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. The afternoon sun filtered softly through the thin curtains in my dining room, casting pale streaks of light across the table I had set just 2 days before. The same table where we had gathered after my husband's funeral. The same table where I had watched people whisper condolences they didn't mean. At 68, I thought I understood loss. I thought I was prepared for the silence that follows a long marriage. 41 years with a man who built a life with me. Brick by brick, memory by memory. But I wasn't prepared for what came after. I had spent weeks planning his farewell. Every detail mattered to me. The flowers, white lilies. His favorite, the music, soft hymns he used to hum while fixing things around the house. Even the catering. I made sure everyone was fed, because that's what he would have wanted. I paid for everything from the account he had carefully set aside. For when the time comes, he once told me, half joking, half serious. I didn't know that account would be emptied before the week was over. The morning after the funeral, the house felt too quiet. His slippers still sat by the bed. His reading glasses rested on the nightstand. I moved through the rooms slowly, like a guest in my own home. That's when I noticed something small, something I almost ignored. My daughter-in-law, Melissa, wasn't there. She hadn't stayed the night after the funeral dinner. No message, no explanation. My son said she needed space. I didn't question it. Grief makes people behave strangely. Or so I thought. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop to check the remaining balance of the funeral account, just to make sure everything had cleared properly. The number on the screen didn't make sense. I refreshed it once, twice. Then I leaned closer, my heart beginning to pound in a slow, steady rhythm. The account was empty. Every dollar gone. At first, I thought it was a banking error, something technical, something fixable. But then I saw the transaction history. Multiple withdrawals, transfers, all within the last 48 hours. And one name, attached to every single one of them. Melissa. I didn't react right away. I just sat there, staring at the screen, feeling something inside me shift. Not break. Shift. Because at that exact moment, I understood something very clearly. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. And if she thought I was too old, too grieving, too weak to notice, then she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I didn't call the bank right away. I closed the laptop, sat there in the same chair where I had spent the last 2 nights thanking people for coming, nodding politely, pretending I was still part of a family that respected me. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock in the hallway. A sound I had never noticed before. Or maybe I had, but never like this. Every second felt louder now. I stood up slowly and walked into the kitchen. The coffee pot was still half full from that morning. I poured myself a cup, even though it had gone cold. I didn't reheat it. I just held it in my hands, letting the chill seep into my fingers. Melissa's voice echoed in my mind. Mom, don't worry about the expenses. Wade and I will help manage things so you don't get overwhelmed. She had said it so gently, so kindly. I remembered the way she placed her hand over mine at the table. The way my son nodded beside her, avoiding my eyes. At the time, I thought they were trying to take care of me. Now I realized they were positioning themselves. I walked back into the living room and sat down again, this time with a different kind of stillness. Not the emptiness of grief. Something sharper. More focused. I opened the laptop once more and went through the transactions carefully. Line by line, date by date. Every withdrawal had been authorized online. Every transfer led to an external account. And each one had been approved using credentials I never shared. But I knew exactly how she got them. Melissa had been helping me organize paperwork for the funeral. Sitting beside me at this very table. asking for passwords, account numbers, just in case we need quick access. I had trusted her. No, I had trusted my son. That was my mistake. A soft vibration pulled me from my thoughts. My phone lit up on the table. A message from Wade. Mom, hope you're resting. Melissa and I decided to take a few days away. It's been stressful. We'll check on you when we're back. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I opened social media. It didn't take long. There they were. Melissa in a wide-brimmed hat, smiling under bright sunlight, a glass of something sparkling in her hand. My son beside her, relaxed, carefree. The ocean stretched behind them. Blue, endless. The caption read, "Sometimes you just need to get away and breathe. Grateful for this life, Red Heart." I didn't feel anger. Not yet. Just a strange clarity. They weren't hiding it. They didn't think they needed to. To them, I was already out of the picture. I set the phone down carefully. Then I went to the hallway closet and pulled out the old leather folder my husband kept locked for years. He used to call it the boring stuff. Documents, accounts, contacts. Things he said I'd never need to worry about. I sat back down and opened it slowly. Inside, everything was neatly organized, just like he always kept things. And right there, clipped to the front, was a business card. A name I hadn't thought about in years. His attorney. I ran my fingers over the card, then let out a quiet breath. They think I'm alone, I whispered to the empty room. But they forgot something. My husband never left things unfinished. And neither would I. I didn't wait until morning. At my age, sleep doesn't come easily, but that night, it didn't come at all. I sat in the living room with that leather folder in my lap. The lamp casting a soft yellow circle on the table. Everything outside that circle felt distant, quiet, like the world had stepped back and left me alone with the truth. I picked up the phone around 6:15 a.m. The number on the card still worked. Law office of Daniel Harper. A woman's voice answered. For a second, I almost hung up. Not because I was unsure, but because I realized, once I said the words out loud, everything would become real. My name is Margaret Ellis, I said finally. My voice sounded steady, calmer than I felt. My husband, Richard Ellis, was a client of Mr. Harper's for over 20 years. There was a pause, then a shift in her tone. Yes, Mrs. Ellis, I'm so sorry for your loss. Mr. Harper is actually in today. Would you like me to let him know you're coming? I'm already on my way. I wasn't. But I would be. The office hadn't changed much. Same dark wood furniture, same quiet hallway, same faint smell of paper and coffee. Richard used to bring me here once a year. Just in case, he'd say, "It's good for you to know where everything is." I used to laugh at that. Now I understood. Daniel Harper looked older, of course. Thinner, more lines around his eyes. But he recognized me immediately. "Margaret," he said, standing up, "I was expecting to see you, just not this soon." Neither was I. We didn't waste time on small talk. I placed the printed bank statements on his desk. Every transaction, every transfer, every detail I had gone through the night before. He didn't interrupt while I spoke. Didn't rush me. He just listened. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "And your daughter-in-law had access to these accounts?" he asked. "Yes. And you authorized that access?" I paused. Then shook my head slowly. I trusted her. That was the only answer that mattered. He nodded once, like he had already reached a conclusion. "Margaret," he said, his voice calm but firm, "what you're describing isn't just inappropriate behavior." He tapped the paper lightly. "This is financial misconduct, possibly fraud." The word didn't shock me. Not anymore. It fit too perfectly. "I don't want a scene," I said quietly. "I don't want shouting or accusations." I met his eyes. "I want control." Something shifted in his expression then. "Respect, maybe." "Then we proceed carefully," he said, "and we proceed legally." He turned to his computer. pulling up files I hadn't seen before. Documents Richard had signed. Structures I didn't fully understand yet. But one sentence caught my attention immediately. Primary beneficiary, Margaret Ellis. I felt something steady inside me. Not relief. Not satisfaction. Something stronger. Security. They thought everything was already theirs, I said softly. Daniel didn't look up from the screen. They often do, he replied. I folded my hands in my lap. Good, I said. Let them keep thinking that. Daniel didn't rush me out of his office. He let the silence sit for a moment after that last sentence. Let them keep thinking that. It wasn't anger I felt. It was clarity. The kind that comes when something finally makes sense, even if it hurts. He printed a few documents and slid them across the desk. Your husband was very thorough, he said, more than most. I looked down at the pages, but the words blurred for a second. Not because I didn't understand them, but because I was starting to understand him. Richard had known. Not everything, but enough. Enough to prepare. Enough to protect me. He started restructuring things about 5 years ago. Daniel continued. Separate accounts, trust layers, conditional access. I frowned slightly. Conditional? Daniel nodded. Certain funds can only be accessed under specific circumstances. And more importantly, he paused. Tapping the paper lightly, they can be frozen if misuse is detected. I didn't say anything. I just listened. Because for the first time since the funeral, I wasn't the one being left in the dark. They didn't take everything, Daniel said calmly. They took what they could see. That sentence stayed with me. What they could see. Melissa had always been confident, organized, sharp. But she was also impatient. She went for what was easy. What was visible. And she assumed that was all there was. I leaned back slightly in the chair, letting that settle. How long would it take? I asked. Daniel didn't need clarification. To secure the remaining assets? He replied. Not long. A few calls. A few signatures. And the money they took? He held my gaze this time. That's recoverable, but it depends on how you want to proceed. I thought about that for a moment. About Melissa on that beach. About my son standing next to her, smiling like nothing had happened. I don't want to chase them, I said quietly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. No? I shook my head. I want them to come back. That was the difference. Chasing creates noise. Waiting creates impact. He leaned back, studying me more carefully now. Then gave a small nod. Understood. He turned back to his desk and started outlining steps. Freeze secondary access. Flag unusual transactions. Prepare legal notice, but don't send it yet. Everything quiet. Everything controlled. I signed where he pointed. 1 page at a time. No hesitation. Because with every signature, I could feel the balance shifting. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But steadily. By the time I left his office, the sun was higher in the sky. The world outside looked the same. Cars passing, people walking, life moving forward. But something had changed. Not around me. Inside me. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel. Then my phone buzzed again. Another photo. Same beach. Same smiles. Melissa, holding up a drink this time. Caption. Best decision we've made in a long time. I looked at it for a few seconds. Then I turned off the screen. No, I said softly to myself. You haven't. And for the first time since Richard died, I wasn't thinking about what I had lost. I was thinking about what I was about to take back. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I stopped by the bank. Not the branch Richard used to handle things. A different one. Quiet, less familiar. I didn't want anyone recognizing me, asking questions, offering sympathy I didn't need. I just needed information. The young man at the counter smiled politely when I approached. How can I help you today, ma'am? I placed my ID on the desk, along with the account number I had written down. I need a full transaction history, I said, and I need to know who authorized the last withdrawals. He nodded, still smiling, typing quickly. At first, everything felt routine. But then his expression changed. Not dramatically. Just a slight pause, a flicker in his eyes. Is there a problem? I asked. He hesitated. Just one moment, ma'am. He stepped away, spoke quietly with someone in the back. A few glances were exchanged. Low voices. Then a woman in her 40s came out, dressed sharper, more controlled. A manager. Mrs. Ellis? She said gently. Yes. Would you mind coming with me for a moment? I followed her into a small office. Closed door, no noise from outside. She sat across from me and folded her hands. These transactions, she began carefully. They were authorized through online access tied to your account. I'm aware, I said. She nodded, then slid a printed sheet toward me. There's something else you should see. I looked down. IP addresses. Device logs. Time stamps. Every single transaction had been made from the same device. Registered under a name I already knew. Melissa. But that wasn't what made my chest tighten. It was the pattern. The withdrawals didn't happen randomly. They were calculated. First, small transfers, testing limits. Then larger amounts, faster. And finally, everything. Drained in less than 36 hours. She knew exactly what she was doing, I said quietly. The manager didn't disagree. In cases like this, she said, choosing her words carefully, we usually recommend filing a formal fraud claim. I leaned back slightly. And what happens then? It triggers an investigation, freezes related accounts, potential legal action. I nodded slowly. That would be the obvious move. The loud move. The kind that gives them time to react, to hide, to prepare. I shook my head. Not yet. She looked surprised. Ma'am, if you delay. I understand the risk, I said calmly. I just need the documentation. There was a pause. Then she nodded. Of course. She printed everything, every detail, every record. I gathered the papers neatly, placed them into my folder. No shaking hands, no visible anger. Just control. As I stood to leave, she spoke again. If I may ask, are you sure you're okay handling this alone? I gave a small smile. I'm not alone. Not anymore. When I stepped outside, the air felt different. Cooler. Clearer. I walked to my car, placed the folder on the passenger seat, and sat there for a moment. Melissa thought she had taken something from me. Money. Security. Control. But what she really did was show me exactly who she was. And more importantly, she showed me exactly where to strike. I didn't go back home and sit in silence this time. That version of me stayed in that house 2 days ago. The woman who walked into that bank, who sat across from Daniel Harper, who held those documents in her hands. She was different. And she wasn't done. That afternoon, I made 3 phone calls. Not emotional ones. Not the kind where you explain, or complain, or ask for help. No. These were precise. Measured. The first was to Daniel. I have the transaction records. I told him. IP logs. Device confirmation. It's all tied to her. He didn't sound surprised. Good, he said. That gives us leverage. I don't want leverage, I replied quietly. There was a pause on the other end. I want control. Another pause. Then, softer this time, understood. We didn't need to say more. He knew exactly what I meant now. The second call was to the bank manager. The documentation you gave me, I said. I want to flag the account, but I don't want a full freeze yet. She hesitated. That's unusual, Mrs. Ellis. I know. You're giving them time. I looked down at the folder in my lap. Yes, I said. I am. Because timing matters. Not when you react, but when they least expect you to. The third call. I didn't make. Not yet. I stared at my son's name on my phone for a long time. Wade. The little boy who used to run into my arms after school. The man who now stood next to a woman on a beach, while his mother sat alone in a house that still smelled like his father. I could have called. I could have asked questions. Demanded answers. But I already had the truth. And truth doesn't need confirmation. It needs strategy. So I set the phone down. And left it there. By the time I finally drove home, the sun was starting to set. The house looked exactly the same. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I walked inside slowly, placing my keys on the table. The same table. The same chairs. The same silence. But this time, it didn't feel empty. It felt quiet. Controlled. I went to the study, Richard's study, and opened the drawer he always kept locked. Daniel had given me the code that morning. Just in case, he had said. Inside, there were more documents. More than I expected. Property titles. Secondary accounts. And one envelope, sealed. My name on the front. Margaret. I sat down before opening it. Not out of fear. Out of respect. Richard had written it for a reason. I opened it carefully. His handwriting was the same. Steady, clean, certain. If you're reading this, it means something isn't right. I paused. My fingers tightened slightly on the paper. I didn't want to worry you, so I handled things quietly. But if anyone ever tries to take what we built, you have more power than they know. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not in sadness. In understanding. He had seen it coming. Not the exact moment. Not the exact betrayal. But the possibility. And he had prepared me. Even when I didn't know I needed it. I folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. Then I looked around the room. At everything we had built together. Brick by brick. Year by year. They think I'm alone, I said softly. But they're walking into a house that was never empty. And this time, I was ready. The next morning, I didn't rush. There was no urgency anymore. That's the thing about clarity, once you have it, you don't panic, you move with intention. I woke up early, just like I used to when Richard was still here. Made coffee, toast, the same routine I had followed for decades. Except this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I sat at the kitchen table with the folder open in front of me. Bank records, legal documents, that letter. Everything laid out neatly. For the first time since the funeral, I wasn't reacting. I was planning. Around 9:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. A call. Melissa. I let it ring. Watched her name flash across the screen, then disappear. A minute later, it rang again. This time, I picked up. Hi, Mom. Her voice was bright, too bright. I was just checking in. How are you holding up? Holding up. I looked down at the papers in front of me. I'm fine, I said. A pause. Then she continued, softer now. We were thinking, maybe it's not good for you to stay alone in that big house right now. Of course. It always starts like that. Concern. Gentle suggestions. We could help you downsize. She added, sell the house, move you somewhere more comfortable. Less stress for you. Less stress. I almost smiled. I'll think about it, I said. That was all. No argument, no resistance. Just enough. Because people like Melissa, they don't push harder when you resist. They push harder when they think you're agreeing. Good, she said quickly. Take your time. We'll talk more when we get back. When we get back. I could hear the ocean in the background. Laughter. Glasses clinking. She didn't even bother to hide it. Enjoy your trip, I said. I will, she replied. And just like that, the call ended. I set the phone down slowly. Then I picked up another document from the folder. Property title. The house. Not in Wade's name. Not in Melissa's. Mine. Fully. With a clause I hadn't noticed before. Transfer requires direct authorization from primary holder. Me. I let that sink in. They weren't asking me to sell the house. They needed me to. That's why she called. That's why she sounded careful. They had already planned the next step. They just needed me to cooperate. I stood up and walked into the living room. Everything was still in place. Photos, furniture, memories. But now, I saw something else. Leverage. Every corner of that house wasn't just history. It was control. I picked up my phone again. Scrolled to Daniel's number. This time, I didn't hesitate. "They've started," I said when he answered. "How so?" he asked. "They want me to sell the house." A brief silence. Then, "Good." I frowned slightly. "Good?" "Yes," he said calmly. "That means they need something from you. And when people need something." He paused. "They make mistakes." I looked around the room again. At the life Richard and I had built. Then back at the folder on the table. "They already did," I said quietly. And this time, I was ready to let them keep going. I didn't tell Daniel everything. Not yet. Some things needed to unfold naturally. That's what Richard used to say when he talked about business. People reveal more when they think they're in control. And right now, Melissa thought she was. 2 days passed. No calls. No messages. Just silence. The kind of silence that feels intentional. Then, on the third day, my phone buzzed again. A group message. "Wade. Hey mom, we're flying back tonight. Thought we could all have dinner tomorrow. Just the three of us." Just the three of us. I stared at the message for a moment. Dinner. At the house, I assumed. Their tone was casual. Normal. As if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't seen the transactions. As if I hadn't watched them celebrate with money meant to bury my husband. I typed back slowly. "That sounds nice." And sent it. No questions. No hesitation. The next morning, I prepared the house. Not like I used to. Not with care meant to impress. This time, everything was deliberate. I set the table simply. 3 plates. 3 glasses. No decorations. No extra effort. Just enough. Because this wasn't a family dinner. It was a meeting. Around noon, I made another call to Daniel. "They're coming tonight," I said. "I expected that," he replied. "Good." I walked into the study as I spoke, glancing at the documents laid out neatly on the desk. "Everything ready?" he asked. "Yes." "Then don't rush it," he said. "Let them speak first." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I will." "And Margaret?" I paused. "Yes?" "Remember," he said calmly, "control isn't about what you say. It's about what you don't." I understood that. Better than ever. By the time evening came, the house felt different again. Not empty. Not quiet. Prepared. I changed into something simple. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that showed effort. Just myself. Because that was enough. At exactly 6:12 p.m., I heard the car pull into the driveway. Doors closing. Footsteps. Then the front door opened. "Mom?" Wade's voice. "I'm in the dining room," I said. They walked in together. Melissa looked the same. Polished, put together, like nothing had touched her. Wade followed, quieter, less certain. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Melissa smiled. "Oh, this looks lovely," she said, glancing at the table. I nodded once. "Sit down." We did. 3 chairs. 3 people. 1 truth, sitting quietly between us. Dinner started normally. Small talk. Safe questions. "How was your trip?" "Relaxing." "Good." Simple. Controlled. Exactly how I wanted it. Then Melissa leaned forward slightly, folding her hands on the table. "We've been thinking about you," she said softly, "about what's best moving forward." Of course she had. I didn't interrupt. "We really believe," she continued, "that selling the house would be the smartest option right now." There it was. No delay. No hesitation. Straight to it. Wade nodded beside her, still avoiding my eyes. It's a lot for you to manage alone, Mom, he added. I picked up my glass of water. Took a small sip. Then set it back down. Slowly. I see, I said. That was all. No argument. No resistance. Just enough. Because they weren't finished. And I wanted to hear everything. Every word. Every assumption. Every mistake. Before I said a single thing. Melissa didn't stop there. She leaned in slightly, her tone softer now, almost careful. We've already spoken to a realtor, she said, just to understand the market. Nothing final, of course. Of course. Wade shifted in his seat, finally looking at me for a brief second. It's just a good time to sell, he added. Prices are high. You'd get a great deal. A great deal. I watched them both quietly. Same posture. Same rhythm. Like they had rehearsed this. Probably had. I folded my hands on the table. And after I sell? I asked. Melissa smiled again. That same polished smile. We've found a beautiful senior community, she said. Private apartment, activities, full support. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. Wouldn't have to worry. That phrase again. I nodded slowly, as if I was considering it. And the money from the house? I asked. Wade answered this time. Well, we'd help manage it, he said. Invest it properly. Make sure it lasts. Help manage. Invest. Make sure. I let the silence stretch just a little longer. Then I leaned back in my chair. You've both thought this through, I said. Melissa didn't hesitate. We just want what's best for you. Of course she did. I reached for my napkin, placed it neatly beside my plate. Then I looked at Wade. Not as a mother. Not as someone asking for understanding. Just, directly. Did you enjoy your trip? I asked. The question caught him off guard. He blinked. Yeah, it was nice, he said slowly. Relaxing? He nodded. Yeah. I turned to Melissa. The ocean looked beautiful, I said. Her smile tightened slightly. It was. I imagine it wasn't cheap, I added. A pause. Just a second. But enough. Melissa recovered quickly. Well, we needed a break, she said lightly. After everything. After everything. I nodded again. Then I reached beside me and picked up the folder I had placed on the chair earlier. Slow, unrushed. I opened it carefully. Pulled out a few sheets of paper. And placed them on the table. Between us. Neither of them moved at first. They just looked. Numbers. Dates. Transfers. Clear. Precise. Real. Wade's expression changed first. Confusion. Then recognition. Melissa didn't speak. Didn't touch the papers. But I saw it. That small shift in her eyes. That moment where certainty cracks. I went to the bank, I said. My voice was calm. Even. They were very helpful. Silence. No excuses yet. No denial. Just that quiet moment. Where the truth finally sits in the room. I looked at both of them. Not angry. Not emotional. Just steady. You took the money, I said. Not a question. A fact. And for the first time since they walked into that house. They had nothing prepared to say. Melissa didn't answer right away. She looked at the papers. Then at Wade. Then back at me. And for a brief second, I saw it. Not guilt. Calculation. There must be a misunderstanding, she said finally, her voice calm, controlled. Those transactions. They came from your device, I said. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't interrupt. Just placed the next sheet on top. IP logs. Time stamps. Her name. Clear. Undeniable. Wade leaned forward now, his face pale. Melissa, what is this? He asked. She didn't look at him. Not yet. Instead, she kept her eyes on me. I had access to the account, she said carefully. You gave it to me. For the funeral arrangements. I gave you access. I agreed. Not trust. Access. There were expenses. She continued. Things you didn't want to deal with. I handled them. I nodded once. Yes, I said. Then I slid the final page toward her. The total. Everything. Gone. In 48 hours? I asked quietly. That's when she paused. Because there's a difference between explaining something and explaining everything. Wade turned to her now. Melissa, his voice was tighter. That's all of it. Still, she didn't break. Not yet. It was temporary, she said. We were going to put it back. Temporary. I let that word sit there. Unchallenged. Because sometimes, the lie reveals itself better when you don't touch it. With what? I asked. Simple. Direct. No accusation. Just a question. She opened her mouth. Closed it. No answer. Because there wasn't one. The room felt different now. Not tense. Not loud. Just exposed. Wade leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. You took Mom's money? He asked. Quieter now. That's when Melissa finally looked at him. Not defensive. Not ashamed. Just irritated. It's not just her money, she said. It's family money. Family. I almost smiled. No, I said softly. It isn't. They both looked at me. And this time, I didn't stay quiet. That account, I continued, was set aside by your father. I looked at Wade. For his funeral. Then back at her. You didn't just take money. I paused. You spent his goodbye. Silence. Heavy. Final. Melissa straightened slightly. This time, her tone changed. Less gentle. Less careful. We needed it, she said. There it was. No more excuses. No more pretending. We've been under pressure, she continued. Bills. Investments. Things you wouldn't understand. Things I wouldn't understand. I nodded slowly. You're right, I said. I don't understand. I leaned forward slightly. But I do understand this. I tapped the papers once. Light. Controlled. You didn't ask. Another pause. Then I sat back again. Calm. Composed. And now, I said, you don't have access anymore. That landed. I saw it immediately. Melissa's eyes flickered. Just for a second. You froze the account? She asked. No, I said. Not yet. That was worse. Because frozen means reaction. Not yet means control. I held her gaze. I wanted you to come home first. Now Wade looked between us. Confused. Uneasy. Why? He asked. I didn't look at him. My eyes stayed on her. Because, I said quietly. I wanted to hear you explain it to my face. Wade didn't speak after that. He just sat there, staring at the papers like they might change if he looked long enough. Melissa, on the other hand, recovered faster. She always did. If this is about control, she said, her voice sharper now, then let's be honest about it. I didn't respond. I let her continue. Wade and I have been managing things for a while, she added. Finances, decisions, everything. You were never really involved. Never really involved. I looked at her for a moment. Then I nodded. You're right, I said. That seemed to surprise her. I trusted you to handle things. I continued, because I believed you were doing it for the family. I paused. But I was wrong. That landed differently. Not loud. But final. Wade shifted in his chair again. His voice quieter now. Mom, we didn't mean for it to go this far. I turned to him. Not cold. Not angry. Just clear. It already has, I said. He looked down. And for the first time, I saw something in him that hadn't been there before. Not guilt. Not fully. But doubt. About her. About himself. About everything. Melissa exhaled slowly, leaning back. So what now? She asked. Straight to the point. Good. I folded the papers neatly and placed them back into the folder. Then I set the folder aside. Deliberate. Because what came next didn't need paper. I spoke to an attorney. I said. Wade's head lifted slightly. Melissa didn't move. Of course you did, she replied. Still calm. Still composed. I also spoke to the bank. I continued. They're aware of the transactions. That's when her posture changed. Just a little. Enough. And? She asked. And nothing, I said. That word hung there. Nothing. No report. No police. No escalation. Not yet. Wade frowned. What do you mean, nothing? I looked at him. It means, I said, I haven't filed anything. Confusion. Relief. Suspicion. All at once. Melissa leaned forward slightly now. Why not? She asked. That was the question she needed answered. The one she couldn't calculate around. I held her gaze. Because this part mattered. Because I wanted to give you a choice. Silence. Wade looked between us again. A choice? He repeated. I nodded once. Yes. I let a second pass. Then another. Long enough for them to feel it. You can return everything, I said. Every dollar, every transfer. My voice didn't rise. Didn't push. It didn't need to. And we handle this quietly. I paused. Then added. Or. That word changed the air in the room. Melissa didn't blink. Wade barely breathed. Or I let the bank proceed. I finished. And we let the law decide what happens next. No anger. No threats. Just options. Clear. Final. Wade swallowed. Mom, that's fair, I said. He stopped. Because he knew it was. Melissa didn't answer right away. She sat there, perfectly still. Calculating again. Always calculating. But this time, she wasn't in control of the equation anymore. And she knew it. I reached for my glass of water. Took a small sip. Set it down. Then I looked at both of them. Calm. Steady. Waiting. Because now, the next move was theirs. Melissa was the first to move. Not dramatically. Just a slow breath, a slight shift in her shoulders, the kind of movement someone makes when they realize the game has changed. How much time? She asked. Direct. No emotion. Back to control. I respected that. 3 days, I said. Wade turned to her immediately. Melissa. She raised a hand slightly. Not at me. At him. And that told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't asking him what to do. She was deciding. 3 days, she repeated. Then she nodded once. Fine. They didn't stay for dessert. We didn't pretend. No hugs. No soft words. Just chairs sliding back, quiet footsteps, a door closing. And then. Silence. But not the same silence as before. This one felt complete. I cleaned the table slowly. Not because it needed it. But because I wanted to. Plate by plate. Glass by glass. The same way I had done it for years. Except this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come back. The next 3 days were quiet. No calls. No messages. No updates. But I didn't chase. I didn't check. Because when you give someone a choice, you don't interfere with their decision. You let them reveal who they are. On the third day, at exactly 4:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. A notification. Bank transfer. Then another. And another. I sat in the living room, watching each one appear on the screen. Amounts. Dates. Reversed. Every dollar, coming back. Not partial. Not delayed. All of it. Exactly as it had been taken. I didn't smile. I didn't react. I just watched, until the final notification appeared. Balance restored. A minute later, my phone rang. Wade. I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. Mom, his voice was different now. Quieter. Less certain. It's done, he said. I saw. A pause. I didn't know, he added. I didn't answer that. Because sometimes, what people don't know is still their responsibility. Melissa handled most of it, he continued. I should have paid more attention. Should have. Another pause. Then, are you going to report it? There it was. The real question. Not about me. About consequences. I looked out the window. The late afternoon light stretched across the yard Richard had taken care of for years. I said I would handle it quietly, I replied. And I meant it. For now. That last part stayed unspoken. But it was there. He understood. I'm sorry, Mom. I closed my eyes for a brief second. Not because I needed to forgive, but because I needed to decide. Take care of yourself, Wade, I said. Then I hung up. Melissa never called. Not that day. Not the next. Not at all. And that told me more than any apology ever could. A week later, I met with Daniel again. All funds returned, he said, reviewing the documents. No discrepancies. I nodded. And the account? Secured, he replied. Access fully restricted. No secondary permissions. Good. That's not all, he added. He turned the screen slightly toward me. Updated documents. Revised structures. Clear. Final. Everything is now under your direct control, he said. No automatic transfers. No shared access. No assumptions. I looked at the screen for a moment. Then back at him. Good, I said. Because that was the point. Not punishment. Not revenge. Control. When I got home, the house felt different again. Not empty. Not quiet. But mine. Fully. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen. The living room. The study. Richard's chair still by the window. His books still on the shelf. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. I stopped in the doorway of the dining room. The same table. The same chairs. But now, I saw it clearly. This wasn't a place where I had been left behind. This was a place I had taken back. That night, I sat down with a cup of tea. No television. No phone. Just the soft hum of the house around me. And for the first time since the funeral, I didn't feel like I was missing something. I felt steady. Complete. They thought they took advantage of my grief. They thought I wouldn't notice. Wouldn't act. Wouldn't understand. But grief doesn't make you weak. It makes you quiet. And in that quiet, you see everything. They spent my husband's farewell on a vacation. I let them. Because in doing so, they showed me exactly who they were. And more importantly, they gave me the one thing they thought I no longer had. Control. I didn't need to raise my voice. I didn't need to fight. I didn't even need to chase them. I just waited. Watched. And when the moment came, I closed the door quietly. And locked it. From the inside.